To introduce our next inductees, please welcome the director of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Media Lab, Mr. Joey Ito.
It's a pleasure for me to introduce the next inductees, MIT Media Lab Professor Joe Jacobson and MIT graduates Barrett Comiskey, J.D. Alpert, who both worked with Joe as undergraduates in the late 1990s. When people ask, what do you need to do to get into the Media Lab? My answer is always, what do you want to do? Because our main focus is having creative individuals with passion and curiosity who do it well and as a result bring something into this world. And there's no better example than these three individuals that we're honoring here tonight. These three are a shining example of the Media Lab's vision and the best of American innovation. Professor Neil Gershenfeld brought Joe Jacobson to the MIT Media Lab in 1995 after hearing about his idea for an electronic book. Joe, in turn, asked Barrett, a math major at the time, and J.D., mechanical engineering major, to work with him on the display technology required to realize his vision. No one was asking for electronic ink. It was something that we didn't even know that we needed, but now most of us can't imagine boarding a plane, relaxing on a beach, or having a 15-minute subway ride without an e-reader. Electronic ink is an invention that highlights the power of what we call anti-disciplinary work. This is the essence of the Media Lab. Joe, Barrett, and JD explore the spaces that are between the disciplines, between science, physics, electronics, user interfaces, material science, to create something wonderfully and completely new. And then they took the next step. The Media Lab, our original motto back when Nicholas Negroponte ran it was demo or die, in contrast to most of academia's publish or perish. And actually it was at a faculty meeting that Joe said, well, let's change it to deploy or die, which we took on until just recently President Obama said, maybe you should rethink that die part. So we're just saying deploy these days. But anyway, the idea isn't that it's not enough just to make a demo, which was the focus of the old days, but you actually have to do something. We built it up a notch, and we now urge everyone to deploy. Barrett, JD, and Joe didn't just demo or die. In 1997, they, along with the other colleagues, founded the company E-Ink. This was one of the most revolutionary companies and created the world of e-books and advanced displays technologies. This is one of the best stories we have about the power of play, imagination, collaborative problem solving, and the tremendous positive impact it can have on the world. Joe Jacobson, Barrett Comiskey, J.D. Alpert are the revolutionary inventors of electronic ink.
I was raised to believe that the wisdom of the world resides in books. All you need to do is take it off the shelf. One time, my father brought me to the Library of Congress, and this is in the pre-internet era. So the notion that there was a physical library that had one copy of every book ever printed in the United States, going back to the founding of the country, was inspirational to me. So my father, who was a Marine, taught me to improvise, adapt, overcome, to persevere. My mother, who was an innovator in New York City, taught me to live life with a humanist heart, to always think of serving others. My elementary years were formative. I attended the United Nations School in New York, which was a group of people from all over the world, just passing through New York. At the United Nations School, I was given a global perspective. And then high school came. I was fortunate enough to earn entry into Regis. Regis is a Jesuit school, and Regis is a scholarship-only program where young boys are turned into men. And the school's slogan is Men for Others, and Regis is founded upon the principle that we're meant to live a life of service. And the global perspective from Eunice, coupled with the concept that a life of service is the only life to live, is what ultimately culminated in where I am today. When I received the course catalog from MIT as a senior in high school, I felt like a kid in a candy store. If I could go to this place and learn about all of these different things and potentially even work in some of these laboratories, I knew that's where I wanted to go. I didn't make it in easily. Both JD and I were waitlisted at MIT, but we persevered and broke down the doors. The Media Lab is a very unique institution. It's the product of a visionary, Nicholas Negroponte. He imagined a building where you could put artists, scientists, engineers, designers, musicians, physicists, all together, and they would imagine the future. I had worked on a range of projects in Neil's lab, from setting up a machine shop to stuffing circuit boards to writing software, and I was a technician of sorts, supporting the grad students. Joe didn't have a grad student, he came in too late, and Neil saw me as a resourceful person who got things done, and Joe had big dreams, and so he needed someone who was flexible and open-minded and willing to tackle problems that were considered to be intractable. So Joe was the visionary who had the dream of an electronic book that could be any book. I was the fearless technical lab adventurer who spent hundreds of hours in the library and the lab, iterating back between learning and experimenting. And JD was the engineer who brought electronic ink into industrialization. I was challenged to create a new form of display material which could be printed and would give the appearance of ink on paper. This is something that leaders of the material science department at MIT and the chemistry department said was impossible. This project consumed me at the expense of my courses. Thankfully, I had some understanding professors who allowed me to at least pass so that I would graduate. But my lab time on this project grew from 20 hours a week to 40 hours to 60 hours a week, which did make it challenging to maintain my undergraduate status. Well, after class, in the evening, I would go to the library where I would stay for many hours reading obscure journals and books about microencapsulation, about electrophoresis, about how to charge particles, and particle science. In addition to books and journals, I was a heavy user of the electronic patent database. Typically, my journey through the patent universe would start with a book where an individual patent would be referenced. I'd then read that patent, learn about the materials used, and then order the chemicals, go into the lab, which was very small, had a very crowded fume hood, and run the experiments till 2, 3 in the morning. Rinse and repeat. For years, we had this concept, this vision, these experiments. We believed it was possible, but we couldn't realize it. So after hundreds and hundreds of experiments which had failed, early one morning in January 1997, we took a microcapsule, put it on a slide in between two pieces of copper, put it under a microscope, and for the first time, we're able to see a particle moving back and forth. This is something that we had been told was impossible, and that motivated us to make it happen. So with e-ink, we innovated in the publishing industry in the developed markets. It's a mature industry, and we transformed the publishing industry. With Migo, we're innovating in the entertainment and education industry for developing countries where affordability remains a fundamental barrier to access to even the most basic forms of entertainment and education, with hundreds of millions of people who have very real problems that innovators are not addressing. Both entertainment and education are universal goods, desired, enjoyed by every human being on the planet. There are very real barriers, affordability barriers, to bringing the kind of entertainment and education that you and I are accustomed to the vast majority of the planet. When you import first world technologies into low GDP countries and you chop them up into little pieces, you just can't give the same existence that you can to someone who's fortunate enough to be born in a wealthy country. So what we're doing at Migo is reimagining proven consumer services like entertainment and education in ways to make them fundamentally 95% cheaper in order to actually be affordable for the majority of the population of the planet. One measure of innovation is scale and impact. With Migo, we're focused on scale, billions of consumers who are not being innovated for, and impact, bringing life-changing services like entertainment, education, that transform individuals, families, communities, and societies.
Please welcome 2016 National Inventors Hall of Fame inductee, Barrett Comiskey.
Thank you for recognizing our contribution, and thanks to much of my family for supporting me in coming today. What I'd like today's young, fresh minds to learn from the story of electronic ink's conception, development, and commercialization is the fact that it was done completely by outsiders. Some of us up here on the stage, and many others from e-ink in the audience. These are outsiders, we were outsiders, who weren't familiar with the accepted scientific boundaries between the possible and the impossible. I myself was 19 when I started on this project. Has been mentioned, a math major with no training in chemistry or materials science. But the outsider's view provided a new perspective to old problems. What the outsider's view brought to the discussion was a new set of questions. Questions like, why can't we? How could we? These questions, married with this innovator's strongest allies, imagination, flexibility, and tenacity. With these, we turn a bold dream into the tens of millions of Kindles that the world uses today to soak in the wisdom of books. So to the innovators of tomorrow, never stop asking, why not? Thank you.